Hello. So thank you all for staying and taking the long afternoon with us. We're really excited to have all of you here. My name is Mira Waller, and I'm the Associate Head of Collections and Research Strategy at North Carolina State University Libraries, and my co-conspirators in facilitating and leading what we really hope will be a town hall type discussion on reclaiming STEM spaces are John Shear, who is the director of the University of North Carolina Press, and John McLeod, who is the director of Scholarly Publishing Services at UNC Press. So although we're going to provide a little bit of framework for this discussion from both the University Press and the library perspectives, and we'll share a little bit about lessons that we've learned and some challenges and successes that we see, what we're really hoping for is sort of a frank discussion, and we really want to hear about your experiences and thoughts in this space around the opportunities and challenges that you see in libraries and presses working together in the STEM areas. So one other thing to mention, housekeeping, we do have a Google Doc at the following link, go.ncsu.edu/ssp_reclaim_STEM. And that document has been pre-populated with a few questions. Feel free to add more questions in there or some thoughts if you're shy about speaking up. And we'll leave that document up for everyone who's here to continue to add to and pull from. And if we have time at the end of this session, or if we need to, we'll refer to the document. So I'm turn things over to John.
Okay. Right, that's our roadmap. We're not going to talk about the roadmap. Okay, so I'm going to be very brief because Miriam's right. We want to have a kind of a conversation. Not to mention, we are not going to solve this in 45 minutes. That's your kind of spoiler alert. But I think one of the things we need to do is some consciousness raising, and I'm hoping that's what we can do today. There are good reasons why, there are almost insurmountably high reasons why we don't see more university presses in STEM fields, although I'm really glad we have some of our partners here, some of the presses that have done the best work, and I'm looking forward to having them contribute to this conversation. But I've also been struck by almost a lack of interest in a lot of university presses in wanting to engage with this topic. That includes my press for a long time. We're just 30 minutes away from one of the world's leading STEM institutions, and we've had almost no structural relationship with NC State, even though we are the affiliate press for the UNC system. We are as much NC State's university press as we are Chapel Hill's, but not surprisingly, we've always been more comfortable kind of ensconced in the humanities programs that Chapel Hill sort of represents in a lot of ways. But I would argue that the University Press needs to be doing a lot more than publishing monographs these days. It's still kind of always going to be at the tip of the spear in terms of mission of what university presses do, I think, but we all need to expand our value proposition, and there's a lot of very interesting publishing going on in different places, and this is what John's really been focused on the couple years since he's been at the press. So what we did at UNC was create this Office of Scholarly Publishing Services to focus almost exclusively on these types of relationships, and John will talk about some of those experiences. But just to summarize and conclude, for me, there were just two things we had to do. One was very hard and one was very easy. So the very easy thing that we had to do was simply express interest, to put ourselves forward, like, hey, we want to have these conversations. And we're very fortunate that we've had really kind of an open invitation from the libraries at NC State to begin that dialogue. So that was easy. The hard thing was actually investing in doing this, because you can just say you want to do it, but you're not going to get anywhere. We basically had to hire John with no clue about how John was ever going to pay his salary, whether it was going to, because all of you in the university press world know that you're in the cost recovery business. You basically have to fund everything that you invest in. And we got a little bit of support. The university system gave us a little bit of grant funding to get John through basically a first year. But that was the hard thing, is to say, this is worth doing, this is worth spending a full-time employee's salary and benefits on, and an experienced one at that. And we had little guarantee of short-term cost recovery, although thankfully John's more than paying his own salary these days. He's going to stick around for a little while. So I think that's all I want to, I think there's no surprises about the obstacles that I've put up there. I'm not going to go through them. And I think with that, I'll turn it over.
Okay. So, same thing here, probably no surprises in terms of what the libraries have been experiencing. And just to add a little bit to that, you have state institutions, and that adds sort of another layer to all of this, because in terms of funding, states, like many other libraries, libraries at state institutions have found that not only are they having stagnant budgets for collections, those budgets are actually being reduced. We're seeing lower enrollment. We're also seeing that there's a possibility that there'll be less grant funding for the government, which means that the libraries will receive less overhead. So for many reasons, we see the increasing subscription costs to libraries as sort of a zero-sum game. And at the same time, libraries, as they've been doing for a while, but it seems to be really stepping up again, are looking at scholarly communication and publishing spaces, and we're exploring more ways to work with university presses. And so we were really sort of excited when John came to us with this sort of opportunity to sort of have a dedicated person who might be looking to work with us in this space. One of the things that has been frustrating, and I'll say this from a personal standpoint, so I can't speak for all libraries, but one of the things that's been frustrating to me is that much of the library's resources are already tied up. So, much of what we spend, we really don't have much of a say in where it goes because it's tied up in things that we absolutely kind of almost feel like we have to have. At the same time, we sort of struggle with how can we do more with less, right? And so finding a way to sort of change the system, the ecosystem in publishing, or at least to affect some sort of change in a way that might address some of what we see as the flaws in the system is something that I think we should all be sort of looking at. And that's not to say that for-profit publishing is a bad thing. It's part of the ecosystem and it's fine. It's more about sort of rebalancing that ecosystem and finding a way forward that is sustainable. So.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just talk about a few sort of case studies that I hope will illustrate some larger points and maybe lead to some discussion points. And I'm going to start with something that I actually was not involved with, something that happened at UNC Press in the 70s and 80s. They decided to launch a series of dental manuals. This is an area that was way outside of their area of expertise. But it just so happened that UNC Chapel Hill had a very good dental program that was very forward-thinking and that wanted to get into publishing as a way to brand their teaching methods and to get the name of the school out. So UNC Press partnered with them. Basically, the way they decided to divvy up the work, and this is, I think, can be a really effective way to approach STEM publishing as a UP, is they really relied on the school to provide the expertise to essentially edit the books. And by that I mean they were acquiring the books. Someone on their faculty was a series editor. They really shaped the books and worked with the authors to get them into shape and then turn them over to the press at the point of peer review. But even in the peer review, they were helping to guide the peer review process somewhat, recommending peer reviewers, and to be actively involved in that. But they did go through the UNC Press peer review and pass the editorial board of the press. And then the press, of course, did all the composition, layout, and design and distributed the books and marketed them. So that's how they divvied things up. But they were really, the expertise at the school is what enabled the press to get into this area. They didn't have to hire an editor that knew dental medicine. So this worked really well through the 90s, financially and in terms of sort of serving the mission of the school, I think. And it was by all means, everything I've seen, a very successful program. But one of the challenges and one of the sort of pitfalls of this approach that I kind of wanted to raise was, as faculty retired, as the dean of the school left and a different dean came in and priorities sort of shifted, it didn't stay as one of the main areas of focus of the school, and understandably so. I mean, dental medicine was changing; they had other priorities. So the series kind of went the wayside without the school constantly pushing to revise the books and to stay on top of it. The press wasn't in a really strong position to do that themselves, and they couldn't go and look outside of UNC for a different editor, for example, because that just it wouldn't have fit the mission. So that was sort of a challenge, I think, that ultimately ended up being. I mean, the books are still in print and actually are used.
It's scary that they still
It is scary, but nonetheless, it did really well for 20 years. Was a very good series. So that's just one example of something that worked and also ultimately had some problems. Another area where I see potential places where it may make sense to think about getting into this for university presses and for libraries are areas where STEM fields overlap with HSS fields in ways that it may not be a direct overlap, but the example I have, we recently started helping a journal at Winston-Salem State University, which is an HBCU in the UNC system. They publish a health sciences journal out of their school there, and it's called the Journal of Best Practices in Health Professions Diversity, which I think hints at its content some. And where this crosses over with the UNC Press list, well, the UNC Press has some books in social medicine, a big history of publishing in African American history and culture and issues, and also some education books, history of education, things like that. And so there are some meetings and some opportunities for us to cross-market that journal with some of our books, and some of the editors at the press have lended me some ideas for the journal and getting the word out about it. So it's been not a direct overlap with our books program, but I've certainly been able to leverage some of the press for helping with that. One other sort of point I thought I'd raise is that sometimes, even when the content is so outside of your zone of comfort, sometimes the mission alignments are just so strong that is a compelling enough case. And I kind of think of this project I'm working on with the North Carolina School of Science and Math, which is actually a high school in the UNC system. So we're talking about math content, high school textbook. I mean, all of this stuff all the red flags are going up, right? Like, don't do this. But the mission it just fits so well with a push that the UNC president wants to make to lower costs to students. We're going to develop a pre-calculus textbook with them that's going to be used. It's going to be used widely in high schools in the state and also at community colleges. We plan to make it available open access. There's been quite a bit of excitement about helping with funding for this because it's obviously something with a lot of potential for impact on students, on lowering costs to students, because it's a huge survey level course kind of thing. So we just think this is a great opportunity for UNC Press to kind of get into the open textbook, to experiment with an open textbook that could have really high impact in the state, and that we're taxpayer funded, so this is something that we can do to kind of directly address some of those concerns that our legislators have. And it's going to be a great textbook. I mean, North Carolina School of Science and Math, they are experts at pedagogy. They know what they're doing. They're designing a very well produced textbook. One other thing I'll mention real quick, we're working with the North Carolina State Extension. This was a really natural fit for us. These are books and other materials, basically for agricultural and life sciences people. It's the ag extensions that every state has these. This has been a great fit because they have a very access to an audience that knows them, that their brand carries to that audience. They develop really good content for industry professionals. They do all that really well. What they didn't do well was get good print prices. They have terrible distribution. So we were able to really partner with them very easily. It was just a completely natural fit to let them continue to publish their work and do their work, but let us handle the business end, get the books out more widely, make them more available, help with some best practices on metadata and stuff like that. So that's been really great. And then the last one I'll mention, and this is just sort of one small thing, is when I first started the position, I was kind of real worried about, well, this is like a one-off project and it seems kind of too small. Do we need to be thinking really big? Should we be trying? But I've come around to the idea of don't be afraid to start small. sometimes those can be things that can lead naturally to places. So we kind of got a frantic call from the UNC School of Pharmacy, which is actually, they're ranked #1 in the country right now. They recently received a huge $100 million single donor gift that's exclusively for research. And they're just a real leader in the field of pharmacy. And they had this pharmacokinetics textbook that they had created in Apple, in iBooks Author. And they were like, we need to have this, the course starts in a week, and we don't have a contract with Apple, and we need to sell it. This needs to be available now. So I said, well, okay, give us the files and let's, and so we had to just quickly do a distribution contract, get it set up with Apple, get it going. It seems like it's a really low-level thing. It's simply selling it through our Apple account, but it really helped them out. And now we're starting to, have bigger conversations with them. We're going to help them convert that into different file formats, so it's not only available through Apple, and help them think about how they can reach out to people to drive course adoption use. And so that's something that I see as like, it was a very small thing initially, but they're interested in publishing more textbooks, and with the kind of funding they have and the endowment they have, I mean, if they wanted to do something big in publishing, they were really in a position to do that with their brand. So that's something that could down the road lead to something bigger. And so we've already touched on some of this, but I'll just kind of quickly tell. I mean, John touched on some of the building a partnership. I mean, and I like what I went to a panel yesterday, and Amy Brand from MIT said something that made a lot of sense to me, which is basically that she thinks the future of university presses and the future of libraries are kind of increasingly overlapping in the future. That's what she anticipates, and I kind of agree with that. I think that's something that is going to happen. And when we first started, doing my office, we kind of quickly realized that NCSU, North Carolina State University, was sort of uniquely positioned within the UNC system to be a partner in STEM fields. I mean, they have really strong programs. They're nationally ranked in a lot of programs, and the library is a leader in a lot of what the work that they do. They have frankly a lot of more resources than some of the other system libraries and expertise there. So it's been great partnering with them, and it was really easy to approach you guys and to just make the case for doing this. And so from there, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so I just have two things to quickly touch upon. One is a grant-funded initiative that we're hoping to work closely with UNC Press on. And the other one is a project that, in the interest of full disclosure, I was involved in for 8 years. It is called Project Euclid, and it is, I would say, one of the best examples of a collaboration between a university press and an academic library in terms of actual true collaborative work in a sustainable manner. And one of the things that is important in that type of partnership is really recognizing the expertise and acknowledging it of your partner. And I would say that was the strength of Cornell University Library, recognizing at a certain point in this project that they really needed to either rebuild or recreate expertise in publishing that a university press already had, or to partner with one. And just to give a shout out to Terry Elling, who is in the audience, it was really Terry, who was at Cornell at the time and sort of the executive director over Project Euclid, and Eric, who was at Duke University Press, who really started those conversations. They were frank, they were open, they were honest, really looking at what could the library bring to the table and what could the press bring to the table. So the other item that I wanted to talk about is the Open Textbook Toolkit. And this is an idea, sort of a hope that we have. We've received initial funding from the IMLS for a planning grant, and the grant will start July 1st, and we'll be focusing on investigating components needed to support faculty and students in one discipline, so similar to Euclid, psychology, who are considering adopting open educational resources. And what we ultimately envision with additional funding, once we get the research and sort of the behavioral studies that we need to do from this initial planning grant, is we think that we will be able to develop, along with UNC Press as a partner and some other stakeholders, a subject-specific, simple, flexible, scalable toolkit that will be used for the creation and adoption of open educational resources in psychology. And we see this as a really good fit for a university press collaboration, because in the way that John was talking earlier about why open textbooks matter to administrators in the university, why open textbooks matter to donors, open educational resources and open textbooks really address an area which sort of resonates with people across the board, so folks in libraries and folks in university presses, both of who in some ways answer in some part to institutional administrators and to folks that they serve. The other piece of this is the rising cost of higher education for students and how that's a concern for many foundations who give grants and also donors with deep pockets. And textbooks are a $14 billion industry. So we think that this is a really good fit for our partnership.
Great, so we did it. We took less than half our time by getting through our PowerPoint, and we can charge through questions, but I know I invited, and I'm really glad to see we've got some of our colleagues from the University Press community, and I'd really welcome, Nick, I don't know whether you want to start us off about what MIT has done, I mean, keeping in mind time, but there's,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, should we use the mic? Is this being recorded or does it matter?
I don't think
I'm
it's
not
being
sure.
recorded.
We had to sign a waiver
I'll
form.
just
Okay, so I guess use the mic. Is what they're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Okay,
thanks.
will do.
Right.
Okay.
You're back to everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to stand to the side like this, so hopefully it'll still be picked up. So I'm Nick Lindsay. I'm the journals director for MIT Press, and I'm here to tell you it's perfectly possible to publish in STM at the University Press. So I can't speak quite so much to the book side. I mean, I know that we have published quite a number of trade, professional, and textbooks that are in STM and have been very successful for MIT Press. In fact, the most recent book that we published that was just a smashing success is a book that's a textbook in deep learning, so which has just been a runaway bestseller for University Press terms. It is possible, and I know this is something that's occurred just fairly recently at MIT, is that there's been a renewed emphasis on having sort of a collaborative atmosphere between the library and the press. So much so that the library has actually explored taking a portion of the collections budget and using that to actually fund open access books at MIT Press. Now those books will be across a variety of disciplines, but STM will be part of that. So it demonstrates a real significant commitment on behalf of the libraries to actually put their money where their mouth is and really fund in a serious way open access and STM at MIT. On the journal side, which I can speak to a little more confidently, is we've been publishing STM for quite some time. So we have 7 journals that are STM journals, primarily in cognitive science and neuroscience. These are all pretty established subscription-based titles. And they're ones that form a significant part of our both the total list that we have, but also the financial picture for the journals division. But we, all those titles are really, they're all decades old now. And what we're really looking at towards the future is publishing more open access STM. So we launched 3 new journals this year, all in cognitive science and neuroscience, and they're all based on an article processing charge model. And we feel that this is the way for us to really sort of see a solid future for us that will work economically for a university press, and I think is a model that can be replicable for others as well. So, there are great advantages to publishing this way, not least of which is all the money's up front.
Yeah.
Someone pays you right away. You can, if an article will not have any work done on it until someone actually pays their ABC, so we don't have to worry about, the vagaries of whether or not someone's actually going to subscribe. So it's very easy to be able to get these journals up to a break-even point sort of right away or within a few years. And what would be great is to work with the library to see if there's some funding sources out there to see us through that very beginning sort of startup phase where we're just getting going and getting things established. Publishing this way, though, has come with some challenges, too, as we've learned, even though we're only maybe 6 months into this now. One of which is we really had to pivot our marketing group at MIT Press. Because now we're marketing out directly to authors to try to get them to actually contribute to the journal as opposed to marketing to libraries to get them to subscribe. That's caused a bit of a rethink in how we're really approaching things. And I don't know that we're 100% there yet, but we're getting there. I don't know that I got anything else to
That's
particularly
great.
share
No.
at this moment in time, but yeah.
Thank you so much.
Turn it over to other you colleagues.
Yeah. Eric, I know you got a lot on your plate these days. You want to add some comments about what's going on in California?
Yeah, sure. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Eric Van Ryn. I'm from the University of California Press. And I guess I'll stand by the side.
You could also go. You could go here, maybe. They did that dais or to
yeah.
the podium.
Oh yeah, they've actually got a mic.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me that was awkward. Sorry, Nick.
So, at the press, I would say that we do have actually kind of a long tradition of STEM publishing, but it has been marginal. It has not been, the strongest focus of our publishing program, either on the books or the journal side. But like Nick, I sort of feel like the pivot to open access opened some doors to university presses to explore reclaiming STEM spaces, if that's the way you want to put it, being a subscription publisher or on a strict cost recovery model, doing unit sales of books doesn't really allow you to do. It kind of, first of all, it opens up the conversation with the library, I think, because libraries have concerns around access and preservation. And it's easier to have the conversation with them when you're talking about open access, even if everybody realizes that, open access doesn't mean free. There's a cost that needs to be recovered in that process. I also think that there's a way that you can kind of rapidly launch an open access journal, which we were able to do with our Collabra journal, our Collabra open access journal, which you can't really do with a subscription journal. I think there's a ramp up with subscription journals that has to happen in a way that that takes a number of years. So, being better connected with the campus, which I think John, you've been able to do, helps a lot because the reality is that the most profitable areas of STM publishing have already been kind of taken over by commercial publishers. And there's no sense gunning for those areas because we're not going to get them as university presses and library publishers. But I think exploring niches where there are new disciplinary endeavors that are bubbling up on the campuses is something where there's an opportunity for us being situated on the campuses and affiliated with the campuses that in many cases commercial publishers don't have. So I think we also have to leverage our connections with the campuses. And indeed, the Collabra Journal, I was actually at a design session for a piece of software that we're designing to support the journal, a submission management system the other day. And a good chunk of the editors of the psychology section of that journal are situated right at UC Davis. So for us, that's right in our backyard. And those conversations are really easy to have if you're out on campus, and I would encourage people to do it because it can bring projects into your press that you normally wouldn't see just come over the transom, or if somebody is looking for kind of a more commercially sustainable way to do this. So again, I think OA opened, just to sum up, I think OA opened some possibilities that have not been there for library publishers and university presses so far.
I think it's a really good point about not aiming for the big profitable journal. But it does occur to me that one of the things that even tinkering with OA and experimenting, it does capacity building so that, maybe it's something that, 5 years down the road, you've actually got some capacity. Because right now,
Yeah.
if a big journal came to us and said, we want to go with you, UNC Press, we love you so much, we'd say, great, we got to figure out how to help you, right?
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't be ready for it.
Yeah.
But this could kind of be like a baby step towards, maybe this is ultimately what it is helping these startups and these maybe small journals that want to transition.
Yeah.
But it does, there's a possibility that it leads to something else, like once you get really good at it. Too.
Definitely, and building scale is critical too, because, and I talked about that in my presentation this morning. One of the reasons why we collaborated with the CDL on building the editorial system is that we felt that, in order to reduce the cost of publishing, we really needed a scalable system. And that's one of the things that you lack when you don't have scale, is the ability to make publishing inexpensive, particularly for campus units who don't have a lot of resources to start out with. And since a lot of the costs of OA publishing are tied to production and the cost of actually producing books and articles, you want to keep that as low as possible, just to increase the amount of material that you're able to put out.
The other thing that you said, Eric, that strikes me as interesting, because we're seeing it on the library side, is the fact that being on campus and sort of being around the interdisciplinary work that's being done gives you opportunities. We at the library have heard from folks who are in some of these new interdisciplinary clusters and centers that sometimes they don't know where to publish something because something doesn't exist in that particular area.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point. I think you need to think of a continuum that exists between the library and the press in terms of how you can onboard those kinds of conversations. You want to be able to, develop a little bit of an intake mechanism so that, either the library or the press can be the first step in the conversation, and then what the next step is, everybody figures out. But you've got to have good lines of communication between those two organizations in order to make it successful, I think.
All right, thank you, Eric. Yeah, Jocelyn, I was actually going to invite you to come up. And
Well, I thought what you were saying about capacity building really applied to something we did at Duke University.
So Jocelyn's at Duke. Thank you for coming. I have a feeling Jocelyn's not going to talk about open access, though.
I'm going to give you a history lesson. Was anyone at the failure session just now? Okay, so that's the story of our initial foray into STEM publishing. So in 2004, the provost of Duke University made a really large investment in the press to help us go after STEM journals. So the investment helped us to build infrastructure. It helped us to hire an acquisitions editor specifically for journals. So we responded to RFP after RFP. And we kept kind of bringing in one or two humanities journals here or there, but we always lost out due to the financial bid. So, and also I think that there was a lack of desire to be our guinea pig for some of these journals. So we eventually decided to stop responding to RFPs in areas that we were not strong in. If a journal wanted to come to us and sort of have a conversation, but not, when they weren't in conversation with other publishers, I think that we would remain open to that. But the really good news coming out of this project was that we did build a lot of infrastructure to help us become a really, stronger humanities publisher than ever. And then we also now have a dedicated acquisitions person for journals. And then at the same time, Mira described our Project Euclid partnership. We built resources that helped us support this Project Euclid arrangement. So I think that we've seen a lot of success there. So I think that the idea of presses and libraries partnering is a differentiator for us and is a way that it allows us to compete with some of the bigger fish. So it's our failure.
Oh, wait, Jocelyn, so not to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about neuro-oncology, because I feel like if it's okay to talk about it, it's an interesting exercise in what, Joe Esposito did write that Scholarly Kitchen article about what happens sometimes with society journals.
So is anyone here from Oxford University Press, the new publisher of Neuro-Oncology? Neuro-Oncology is a journal that did come to Duke University Press, I guess in the early 2000s, and I don't know the Joe Esposito article that you're mentioning, but I think that we felt that we we're providing similar technology for them, but I think that they, so I think as a university press, we still have somewhat of an artisanal approach to our editorial and production, and we do, really, really care about copy editing and invest a lot of resources in that. Neuro-Oncology as a medical journal is prioritizing getting this really critically important research out as soon as possible. So that artisanal approach and that desire to get things out, in an unbaked form were, I think, in tension. But Amira, are there other pieces that I'm missing?
The one thing that I thought was interesting, and I wasn't involved, I just was watching from the sidelines a little bit, was the fact that what Duke Press did was really build the journal up. I think that without the press, the journal might not have caught OUP's attention.
Right, yeah. So it had come to us as a startup, I think, through the Duke University hospital or something, or medical school. So, but yeah, so they eventually outgrew us.
To put it politely, so thank you, Jocelyn. Terry, do you want to add a few words? I think you're the last semi-guest invited speaker here. You can really go freeform for the last few minutes.
So I'm Terry Elling. I'm the Associate Director of Project Muse. And I guess I should start by saying that I have been laboring in the demilitarized zone between libraries and publishers for about 15 years. And it is actually a sweet spot. So Project Muse got started as a joint venture of the Sheridan Libraries at Johns Hopkins University and the Johns Hopkins University Press. That was 22 years ago, and we are thriving today. And I was also, as Mira said, the executive director of Project Euclid back at Cornell University. But let me just quickly tell you about a project we're working on right now at Hopkins. It is the Black Press in America. This is the history and the development of black newspapers in this country over the last 100 years. There are 4 authors that are currently scribing away, even as we speak. Books will probably be published in another year or so, first book's coming out. What's going to happen is that the OER components of these books will be handled by the library. So the Hopkins Library will be using things like the IEEF to do annotations on the images. There will be a great number of images involved, including cartoons, illustrations of one kind or another, and even photographs. Those will be annotated using the IEEF framework. They will also be using Omeka, which is where all the OER collateral will be deposited. So that's their role, living in a parallel universe. On our side of the line, those print books, the digital analogs of the print books will go out through the press. The digital books will be on Muse, and we will be using hypothesis annotation technology to annotate the text components of those books. And then Hopkins is planning to go to Mellon for a grant to federate annotation activity, both by the authors as well as the readers, across both the images and the text. So all annotations that might be occurring, both in the OER environment and in the books, will actually be aggregated and be available in one place. So that's how we're working. The authors, in fact, on Monday I had a meeting with the authors, the libraries were there, and Muse and the press was there, the acquisitions editors. So it's really quite exciting to see that kind of synergy that's percolating around a project like this. So.
Thank you. We got a few minutes for questions, or are there more testimonials that anybody wants to offer? Yeah, hi.
Melanie Schlosser, Library Publishing Coalition.
Oh, hi.
A number of
Nice to
people.
meet you.
A number of people touched on this kind of tangentially, but I was hoping that a couple more of you might want to say something about the role of the library in these collaborations outside of holding the purse strings.
You should talk about this because this has been your key to success.
Yeah, so I've been working on a lot of different projects. There's 17 schools, like I said, in the UNC system, and every library is different, frankly, and they have different missions, different audiences, different students they're trying to serve. So the projects have really varied greatly, and I have to say that it's kind of project to project what role the library plays, the press plays. In a lot of cases, we actually will fund stuff. We'll be the primary funder of the project. The library oftentimes helps with things like archiving. Whenever there's an open access version, they're much better at hosting that than the press is. So there's places where I feel like it's obvious the library is a better person to fill that role, and the press can provide, other services. It really depends on the library, though. When I'm working on a project with North Carolina State Libraries versus, North Carolina Central, it's just a vastly different resources involved at each place, and so that plays a big part of it. I don't know if I quite answered your question, but yeah.
And just to add to that a little bit, having been a part of two of these types of, well, one that's starting out that we're working on, and one in my past with Project Euclid, I would say that for me, when I've participated from the library side, a lot of what we've done has been providing the technical infrastructure, also the archiving, and one piece that has been interesting for me currently at North Carolina State University Libraries is that we have an office of copyright and digital scholarship, and the person in that office has a library degree but also has a JD, and has really played a pivotal role in sort of helping with CC BY licensing, helping with sort of helping faculty conceptualize how an OER might work in terms of legal questions. So I feel like, as John was saying, there are sort of different things that different libraries bring to the table, and I would say that that's probably true with presses as well.
Well, and I'll just add, just to expand just briefly, John's right. Like, some of the libraries really wanted to have a lot of control over it, and in some cases, we just are printing and putting books in the warehouse. In other cases, we're helping them with workflow. And one of the keys that we realized is, the libraries were the gatekeepers on these campuses. They knew the people that were doing publishing activity. They were a trusted source, whereas we were kind of a, slightly dubious partner in some ways. And so it was, John's very diplomatic and definitely positioned ourselves as we want to be a service provider that helps you, the library, execute your mission. So he would sit with each librarian and say, what is it you're trying to do on your campus? And then try and figure out how can the press plug in? And in a lot of cases, we are very much a silent partner. There's just places where we're almost doing nothing, although what we're doing is helpful. And there's other places where they're like, hey, we're just going to turn this over to you. Can you just manage this? And so we're unusual in that we have this built-in affiliation with 17 institutions, but I think part of it was just the way we positioned ourselves is helping them meet their own goals rather than saying, damn it, we're the UNC Press and we're going to come in and tell you how to do publishing, right? Nobody wanted to hear that, and we couldn't really help anybody if we did that anyway. So it's partly John's diplomatic skills that I think helped us be successful. I think we've got 2 minutes. Yeah. Go ahead. You each get 1 minute.
Okay. You're going to have to readjust this. This is a really little thing, but maybe not. I'm somebody who worked for the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences, therefore a nonprofit. Now I'm working for People's Medical Publishing House USA, which is a Chinese-owned company publishing in the United States for the Western market. And the one comment, I can't remember which of you made it, was about keeping open access production and editorial costs low. And then mentioned about artisanal approach we tried to do the artisanal approach until Blackwell bought the production, and we instantly went to offshore editing and so forth, my memory of that is reading a book that we had sent, the first book through. I put a sticky note every place I found an egregious error, and it was Greek authors mostly writing in English, and I broke the spine of the book by the time I was done. And I just, now I really have learned to hold my nose and just make it go through the press fast. I don't like working this way, but where do you find that sweet spot? How do you save costs without sending it offshore and having non-native English speakers do the editing? I'm not gonna.
You have to have good vendors and a good vendor network, and I'm lucky to have Longleaf Services, which is a distribution company and has Longleaf, which is a UNC Press-owned distribution service that provides other marketing services. So I'm a very small office, but I'm able to leverage Longleaf's vendors essentially. So that's crucial, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I don't know.
Yeah.
45-minute session. Hey, Tom.
Hi. So my name's Tom Elrod. I'm representing the commercial publishers right now because I'm a managing editor at Taylor & Francis on STEM journals, but I used to work at UNC.
Disclosure, right.
Used to work at UNC Press, so I come in peace. And I just had a question really for anyone, especially any UP people here that do publish STEM, is apart from questions of scale, price, and the resources, what do you think are some advantages that a UP can bring editorially to publishing STEM journals or STEM publications that some of these big flaws you mentioned with the commercial publishers just aren't doing or can't do easily? And maybe OA is something, because obviously we're making a big push for OA too, but I think for different reasons than UPs may be doing.
You talk about that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I mean, I think one of the things I'm hoping to see is that in partnering with the library and these individual campuses where they have an area of expertise, are we able to kind of leverage that into helping with the editorial vision of projects, whether it be journals or books. In other words, North Carolina State has this amazing research going on. The library knows all the researchers and the faculty. So together, can we create like a three-way partnership with faculty, library, press, where we don't really have the editorial expertise there, but between the library and the faculty members, they really do. And so I think that's how I see it working well. Really kind of giving a lot of the editorial control back to, or sort of making it more open to the faculty members themselves, rather than having the publisher do that necessarily. Now, things still need to be peer reviewed. There needs to be quality control there. So that does raise those issues, like are they capable of handling peer review? So that often comes up, and that's one of my concerns with this kind of publishing that you need to be careful about. So yeah, that's a good question.
I think we've hit our time, so thank you
Yeah.
everyone for solving.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yay.
All right.